What's up guys? Welcome back to episode 2 of my poker vlog. I want to give a quick shout out to everyone that watched the first video, liked, commented, and especially subscribed. Don't be afraid to create a duplicate account and do it again. We're back at Boston Billiard Club this session. Once again, I can't say enough good things about the folks over there. If you liked the action in the first video, you're definitely gonna like this one as well. We get into some big pots. Unfortunately, my phone died at the very end of the session before the last hand in the video, and someone forgot my spare battery pack at home. But the hand was too big to leave out, so let's play some poker. We're ready to mix it up. We buy in for the max, which is 500. Let's go. It's about 9 p.m. and we've been at the table for just about 15 minutes when we look down at King 10 offsuit on the button with a $5 under the gun straddle and one call in front of us from the player in the cutoff. I don't want to let everyone limp in. I like raising here in position even with the somewhat marginal hand. We bump it up to $20. The small blind calls, the straddler calls, and the cutoff calls, so we go to a four-way flop of ace, queen, 4 rainbow. It quickly checks around to us. We do have a gut shot straight draw, but I see no reason to bet and possibly get raised out of our equity. So we check, and the turn is a good one. It's the jack of clubs. We now have the stone cold nutter butters on a board with a backdoor flush draw. The straddler checks, and the cutoff quickly announces all in for about 137. We're obviously not folding, but we do have a decision between smooth calling and raising over the top. I think calling is the right play here given how strong our hand is. We're not going to be scared of too many river cards outside of clubs. We make the call, but alas, the two players behind us fold, so we're all in to the river. We let our opponent know we've got the stones.
I have the nuts for now. Not anymore.
Until the river comes one of the few bad cards. It's the 5 of clubs, completing the potential flush. We turn over Broadway, and fortunately our opponent mucks, so we're going to take this one down. Couple orbits later, we're on the button again, and we look down at the 9-4 of clubs. The hijack raises to 15 in front of us. It seems like a fair price to play in position. We call, and both blinds call, so we're going to another four-way flop of 9 ace 4 with 2 hearts. It's an easy game when you always make a hand. The small blind checks, and the big blind likes this board as well. He leads for 15. The original raiser and the hijack makes the call, and the action is on us. We've got bottom 2 pair on a board with a flush draw out there. With a strong but vulnerable hand, it's a good spot to build the pot and thin the field as well, so we raise to 65. The small blind gets out of the way, the big blind calls, and the hijack folds, so we're heads up to a turn, which comes the queen of hearts. Obviously don't love this card as it completes the flush. Our opponent checks to us. We could bet here, but I think it's a fine spot to peel one off and reevaluate on the river. We regret doing this when the river comes the jack of hearts, putting a 4-card flush on the board. Our opponent doesn't think too long before betting out for $100. It's not too large a bet relative to the pot size, but I do think our opponent has a lot of hearts in his range, including the ace of hearts. We obviously do not have a heart, so we're going to lay this one down. We haven't seen much in the way of premium starting hands so far this session. We wait another 20 minutes or so before looking down at Queen 10 offsuit under the gun +1. UTG limps. This is probably not a hand we really should be getting involved with, but we're not here to make boring vlogs, so we raise it up to 20. It folds to the button, who decides that's not enough and 3-bets us to $50. This player has been very tight for the little over an hour we've been playing so far, raising very infrequently pre-flop, and this is the first time we've seen him put in a 3-bet. Our hand is weaker than it should be, but his raise is small enough that we're getting an okay price to call with the dead money in there, so we do, and the flop comes deuce queen 7 rainbow, giving us top pair on a board that's drier than LA in July. We check in flow, and the button does not slow down. He bets $50. I'm already worried that his range has a lot of aces, kings, ace queen, and king queen suited, but I didn't come this far to fold top pair to 1 bet, so we call, check dark, and peel off a turn, which is a bricky 5 of spades. Almost as soon as the turn card hits the felt, our opponent pushes his remaining stack forward, ripping it in for his last 170-ish, and I'm hating life. It's about a pot-sized jam. I think it's a spot where I'm going to have to call with some weak top pairs and fold others. Of those, I think it's a lot better to call with hands that don't contain a spade, as holding a spade in our hand makes it less likely that he's semi-bluffing with a flush draw, one of the hands we want him to have. After thinking for a minute or so, we do fold. It's not an easy one, but I think our opponent has earned some respect given how tight he's played this session so far. Just a couple hands later, we pick up ace 9 of diamonds in the small blind. At this point in the video, I'd like to introduce a player sitting on the opposite end of the table who I'll call Tim. Tim sat down around the same time we did with a big stack of about 1,500, and then showed a propensity to limp and open a very wide range of hands and play aggressively post-flop. Not too long before this, we saw him jam the river against one of the other strong players at the table for about 500 effective with total air. I'm not saying it was a bad move, but it was clear Tim was not here for the money, he was here to win. Anyway, back to the hand. Under the gun limps, and Tim raises the 20 from the low jack. The hijack calls. I think I'm usually ahead of both of these players' ranges, especially Tim's, and even if I'm not, ace-x suited makes a good bluff 3-bet candidate because it can still make the nut flush, blocks hands like aces which have us crushed, and will still have decent equity against the rest of our opponent's range. I 3-bet to 80. Tim does make the call, and the hijack calls as well, so we go to a 3-way flop of 8 deuce 6 rainbow. We're first to act. It's not necessarily a great flop for our range, but it shouldn't be for our opponents either. We decide to bet 110. Tim calls. I don't necessarily think he needs to have a piece of this flop to do that, and the hijack lets it go. The turn comes the 5 of clubs. This card should be a brick. I think we may still be ahead with ace high. We slow down and check. Tim quickly checks back, and the river comes an ace, giving us top pair. We're happy to connect with the ace, but we check again. It's likely we have the best hand, but also very possible our opponent has an ace as well with a better kicker or even made 2 pair. If we are ahead, I want to give Tim a chance to bluff the river, which he's done frequently when given the opportunity. Tim does bet. He puts out 250 and puts us to a decision. We may not love this spot and we could be crushed, but if you're going to give opponents a chance to bluff, you're also going to have to call them off when they do. Any decent player is going to have enough bluffs in this spot that if we fold even our weak top pairs, we're just going to be folding way too much. So I do announce a call, and he shows us the bad news with 3-4 offsuit for a turn straight. Even the dealer is confused to see him roll over this hand after calling an additional $60 pre-flop, but Tim shamelessly scoops the pot, and
that's poker, folks.
We're stuck about $200 after this hand, but luckily we're able to pick up some small pots in the next few orbits, so we're back to about even when we're dealt a pair of 10s in the cutoff with a button straddle. The small blind limps in for 5, and Tim in the hijack raises to 25. We know this raise doesn't mean Tim has to have a hand. When it folds to us, we're going to try to isolate him with a raise to 85. Action folds back to him. He calls. If he was willing to call $60 with 3-4 offsuit before, I can't imagine what he would fold here, and we're heads up to the flop, which is 9 deuce 7 with 2 spades. It's obviously a good flop for us, and it's one we're going to bet often. When he checks to us, we put out 100. He wastes no time calling, and we're off to a turn, which is another undercard, the 3 of clubs. Tim checks to us again. We need to bet again on this board as we almost always have the best hand, but don't want to give our opponent a chance at a free river card. We're playing about 320-ish in our stack. We'd bet around 200 or 250 if we were deeper, but that wouldn't leave us a river sizing that would make any sense, so we make the simple decision and fat finger it all in.
I'm all in.
And Tim folds. Nice. We're back in the black, which is always a good feeling, and wait about a half hour before picking up another big pocket pair, 2 jacks on the button. Tim opens up this pot as well for $20 from the low jack. It folds to us, and we 3-bet to 80. It's a fortunate spot to pick up a strong hand as we've been 3-betting this player frequently, and he's likely to think we're simply making a move in position. As expected, he does make the call and checks dark to us before the flop comes out King Queen 3 rainbow. Not the best flop for us with 2 overcards to our jacks. We're fine to let this check back, and the turn comes the 7 of spades. He checks again. I don't really see any reason to bet here, as the only river card that really scares us is an ace. The river comes the 5 of diamonds. Tim checks one more time. It's likely he has some piece of this board when he checks, as it looks like he's trying to get to showdown. I'm just not sure if his piece is better than our jacks. We elect not to value bet and instead just show our jacks, which turn out to be the winner. Fortunately for the vlog, we're not quite done mixing it up with Tim. Just 2 hands later, we look down at King 9 offsuit in the hijack with the button straddle on. Tim limps in the big blind. At this point, I'm really just trying to get involved in as many hands with him as possible. I limp in as well. The cutoff limps, and the button checks are option, so we're 4 ways to the flop, which is favorable. 9 King 4 rainbow. Tim checks. We're going to want to have some strong hands like this in our checking range, and this is one of the better spots for it. With top 2 pair, we're likely very far ahead, and there aren't a whole lot of draws on this rainbow board, so not too many turns will scare us. We do check, it checks around, and the turn is the king of diamonds, giving us a boat, and adding a backdoor flush draw to the board. Now Tim leads out for 35. We could slow play here, but we've been playing back at Tim quite a bit already, so he knows we'll have plenty of bluffs and semi-bluffs in our range after our flop check. After that check, it's likely that a raise on a board pairing king is going to look suspicious. We raise to 110, the 2 other players fold, and Tim makes the call. The river is the 8 of clubs, it's a total brick, as all straight and flush draws miss, and Tim thinks for a good couple of minutes before deciding to bet. 325. I'm trying not to show it, but in my head I'm doing cartwheels on the moon.
I want him to think that I'm pondering a call, but all I'm really thinking about is Vegas and the fucking Mirage.
We've got about 600 in our stack, we rip it in,
All in.
praying he'll call the extra 300, but he eventually lets it go. I don't know what he had. It seemed like he had a legitimate decision on the end, so I can only assume a 9 or some kind of pair like 10s, jacks, or queens. At this point, it's getting late into the night, we've had a pretty nice run of cards and are up about 800, we're getting ready to rack up and be on our merry way. My phone is dead, so I'm no longer filming, which is unfortunate, but I figure I'll play a couple more hands before finishing the session, not expecting to play any huge pots, especially as Tim had recently left the table at this point. We look down at ace-jack offsuit in the big blind. The under the gun player limps in, under the gun +1 limps in, and the button raises it up to 25. We're calling for that price, and under the gun calls as well, so we go 3 ways to the flop, 4 jack deuce with 2 spades. We're first to act and check. The under the gun player now donk leads for 50. I have a bit of history with this player, and this is a move I don't expect her to make too often with a flush draw. I also don't expect she would have called 25 pre-flop with a hand like 4 deuce, jack 4, or jack deuce. I think she's going to have a lot of naked jacks in this spot, which I'm almost definitely ahead of. The button passes and the action is on us. I think we've got the best hand and I want to get some more money in now. So I raise to 150 and she snap calls. The turn now comes the queen of diamonds. Not great. Queen jack is a hand she very reasonably could have, or even a hand like ace queen or king queen of spades that might have led the flop with 2 overs and a flush draw. I check and she checks behind. The river is the jack of hearts and we make trips. Going with the read that our opponent has some kind of jack, we bet large for value. 325, which is about pot sized. We're praying for a call, but our opponent does something unexpected and announces all in for an additional, what looks like about 800. We don't have an exact count, but that's almost our entire remaining stack at this point, and just like that, the 4-hour session has come down to this one decision in the largest pot of the night for all the marbles. It's a really interesting spot. I don't expect this player to have any bluffs here at all, which means I need to decide if I'm beating her value range. We lose to hands like pocket 4s and pocket 2s, as well as queen jack, but I really doubt this particular player would check any of those hands back on the turn. Additionally, this player has shown a willingness to raise for very thin value in marginal spots. In an earlier hand against Tim, she did a similar move in a similar situation and actually unknowingly got Tim to fold the best hand. Given this, my thesis that she has a naked jack is still intact. King jack and jack 10 are realistically the only hands I beat in this spot, but I think they're by far the most likely, so after tanking for almost 5 minutes, I do decide to go with my read and make the call, and she turns over king jack. We breathe out a massive sigh of relief and show the table our ace jack and pull in a pot of almost $2,500. That's going to be enough excitement for us tonight. It's almost 1 a.m. We fold another couple hands before finally calling it. Overall, it wasn't easy at the end, but it was a very good session, and I booked one of my largest single session wins ever. For 4 hours of play, we're in for 500 and out for 25.52 for a profit of over 2K. Not too shabby.